Well, we want to thank everybody who's tuning in to this very special event, if you will, that we're putting on through Grace Students. Our focus for this month of July has been the concept of one, the number one, and then better together. And the idea of this was centered around a prayer that Jesus prayed over in John 17:21. It says, I pray for them all, and this is Jesus praying for us. He says, I pray for them all to be joined together as one, even as you and I, Father, are joined together as one. I pray for them to become one with us so that the world would recognize that you sent me. And so our thoughts and ideas have been that outside of the home, outside of mom and dad, we feel that police and school are the main two voices that speak most to these young people. And to you young people. There's been a disconnect between police and students. There's also been a disconnect between teachers and students. And so we feel that on the brink of everything that's going on, a lot of our students are about to go back to school. Hopefully, we'll talk about that stuff. But we just wanted to sit down and have conversation in these two areas specifically of how to get better as one. And so we just thought to have these different roundtable style talks. So last week we had the roundtable talk with police, just trying to hear their perspective. They're the law. Students are not going to be able to avoid interaction with the law. They're not going anywhere. We wanted to help them to have better relationships with the police. And we wanted to help break that divide, help tackle the us versus them mentality. And then today, obviously, have teachers here with us, administration here with us to do another talk. We want, same thing, relationships between students and teachers to get better. So I thank all of you for being here. A couple of you I got personal relationship with. So if we can just start off by giving intros, who you are, where you represent, and things like that. John, I'll start with you.
Absolutely. My name is John Fitzgerald. I'm an assistant principal at Pattonville High School right here down the road. I oversee career technical education and alternative education for the district.
All right. Miss Kathy Rubin.
My name is Kathy Rubin, and I'm a retired English teacher. I taught in the Parkway District. Lenny was actually my student at Parkway North.
My students have heard a couple of stories about you. So this is the infamous English teacher right here.
And I am very happy that Lenny asked me to be a part of this because I think it's a very important conversation to be having right now. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll go, Doc.
I'm Jim Seifert. I was in the Parkway School District for 33 years. I was at Parkway North for 31 years as an original staff member. Had an opportunity to help start that school, and what a blessing that was. And that's where I got to know Lenny. And I thought I had retired and ended up going to Westminster Christian Academy as an assistant head of school. I was going for 1 year. Signed 11 one-year contracts ultimately, and so 44 years later, I'm trying again maybe to retire. But I was telling Lenny, I think it's RE-tired. The Lord says you've got some more strength in this body. Put some new tire on the bottom and let's go. So.
Right. That's awesome. Tracy.
My name is Tracy Weber. I'm starting my 16th year of teaching at Rittner High School, and I also have a 4th grader at Rose Acres here in the Pattonville District.
Awesome. Last but not least, back there, Dr. Davis.
Sure. I'm Joe Davis, superintendent in the Ferguson-Florissant School District. We have been in Missouri this is our going into our 6th year. We moved here from North Carolina. My son, who's in the audience, he's a rising sophomore at one of our schools, at our STEM high school. I'm superintendent, but I'm a math teacher at heart. I love math. I've taught math for years, and just love education, and more importantly, love the Lord and people.
Nice. Well, we obviously know that the two hot button topics in our culture right now is obviously COVID and obviously all this racial tension that's happening. So I think that's what we really want to hit on today. But in the midst of all of this madness, especially you three that are in the planning and all of that, how are you guys doing with all of this? I'll start with Dr. Davis. In the midst of all this planning,
Yeah.
decision making,
Absolutely.
pressure, how are you guys doing?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because we just had a board meeting last night, and the Ferguson Florissant School Board voted to start school 100% virtual. We a couple of weeks ago had a board retreat on July 11th, which was a Saturday, and we presented two options. One was a hybrid model where students would go to school depending on your last name, Monday, Wednesday, then Tuesday, Thursday, and then Fridays would be sort of an asynchronous learning day. We've gotten lots of concerns, certainly with the virus changing and raging, if you will. Cases, Missouri every day is hitting new records. Across the country, same thing's happening. And so the board asked the administration to take a deeper look at, how are people feeling, teachers in particular, and students as well. So we've had several Zoom conversations with students, personally had them with students and teachers, especially our early ed teachers, our teachers all the way through high school, and parents. And after having many of those conversations, doing surveys, and really getting the voices of the community, people we serve, 81% of our community said we need to start virtual because it's just not safe.
Wow.
So that's what we are.
Wow. Tracy, John, how about you guys? Where are you at? How are you doing in the midst of all this?
So in Pattonville, we're actually slated to start August 24th with a hybrid schedule with Mondays as a virtual day. All students are divided in half by alphabet, and they'll come 2 days a week. Students also have the option to do all virtual as well. So right now, we're waiting on students to decide whether or not they're going to be doing the hybrid schedule or the virtual schedule. And as we oversee the master schedule for the high school specifically, it's kind of a waiting game. It's let's see how many students are going to do which, and then from there we kind of have to reinvent the wheel once we have those numbers, because we still want to provide high quality education. We still want to offer all the courses the students want, and figuring out how we can do that with fidelity is kind of the goal right now.
Yeah. Tracy, let me start with you on this one. What are some of the fears as educators that you guys are having as you're thinking about going back into the classroom? What are some of the fears that you guys have?
There are so many different fears that are going through our heads. We have fears of when we do go back, what happens if the student gets COVID or a teacher gets COVID? Is everybody quarantined for 14 days? How is that going to affect our sick leave as a teacher? For kids going back, how are we going to keep them separated enough? They're used to being, close together and going up and giving hugs or whatnot. How are we going to effectively distance them socially? For me personally, I have a hard time hearing, and I cannot hear a lot of students as it is, so I have to ask them to repeat themselves. If their face is covered in a mask, it's going to be even harder for me to do that.
Doc, for you and Miss Kathy, I can't even say Kathy, I still say Miss Rubin. I can't, man. It's habit. It's habit. As retired educators, seeing some of the stuff that's going on right now, having family that's in education, what's the pressure and the stuff that you guys are seeing? Even now, having grandkids in school, I mean, you kind of mentioned some stuff as we were talking earlier, just where you're at in thinking with your grandkids going back. But as retired educators, what's your process?
Well, I think this is we were just talking a while ago, this is something that obviously in society, let alone in education, none of us have lived through something like this. Mm-hmm. So it's all new to us. Yeah. And I think what I've observed is one of the things that people want is answers. Mm-hmm. We've all pretty well identified the questions, but we really don't know the answers because we've never experienced this. This is something that we've never planned for before. And as an administrator, I know one thing: you can make all the plans in the world that are exactly right down to the nth degree, and there can still be a curve thrown at you. And especially with the two issues that we've introduced here, with the social unrest and then you add COVID to it, And that especially is the one thing that they just don't know. We have a son who's an administrator. I've got a granddaughter who's a teacher. I've got four grandkids that are in college and high school. And I'm praying for them, concerned for them.
Yeah.
So I look at it, I'm sort of a bystander right now. I know enough
Right.
sort of to be dangerous about
Right.
what happens in school, and yet none of us have those answers.
Yeah. Kathy, what about you?
Well, I don't have neither one of my two children went into education,
Gotcha.
but I have 5 grandchildren that are all at various stages of their education. And I know that my daughter and my son and they are very concerned about the psychological or social impact that it's going to have on these kids through COVID, that they're going to be somehow or other scarred by this whole idea that they're not at school with their friends, that they're not able to socialize, that they are missing out on like important things that should happen when they're 8 or when they're 10 or when.
Right.
And I tend to be a very realistic, but a realistically positive person. And so what I keep telling my daughter and son-in-law and my son and daughter-in-law who are wringing their hands over this whole thing is that I feel that, like you had said, Jim, nobody's ever been through any of this before, and maybe there will be some positive things that come out of it.
Yeah.
I think maybe kids will appreciate being at school more.
Yeah.
Maybe when they get to go back, they'll say, "Wow, that being at home business was not for me." You know, I miss my teachers, I miss my friends, I miss the whole structure of the school day. And so I keep thinking that, and I also keep thinking, and I've asked my grandchildren this, I go, when you look back on this 10 years from now, and we will get through this, and it will all be good, when you get through with this 10 years from now, what do you think you'll remember?
Yeah.
And the coolest thing that my 8-year-old granddaughter said was, well, I'm going to remember that I couldn't hug you. And that was that. She said, but I'm going to remember that I got to be with mommy and daddy, and that we learned things at home, and we did things that we wouldn't ordinarily do. So I'm trying to look at it that way. I'd be looking at it totally differently if I was still in the classroom. I'd be thinking the way you're thinking, oh my gosh, what happens if a kid gets sick, if I get sick? But trying to keep it that way. I don't know.
Well, let's stay on those lines for a second, because as a parent, what is there anything that we're missing as parents? Because we could easily fall on any side of the spectrum of like, no, go, I want them out the house. We can fall into the camp of nope, virtual, all of that. But when we're talking about this stuff, as far as planning and getting ready for the school year, is there anything that we're missing? Major concerns that you guys got that may fly over our heads? Is there anything there? No?
What I would say is, ever since we announced our plans, I believe last Monday, and I would say that parent response has been very positive.
Awesome.
In a way that I think parents understand the reality of the situation. And I think for the most part, parents also understand that we're all chasing the same goal. We want kids back in school learning, and we're going to do our best to achieve that goal.
Nice. You going to say something, Tracy?
Yeah, I was going to just add a little bit about the social-emotional impact that I think being home has on our students.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with quite a few students the other day in a Zoom call, and it was resounding wanting to be back with my friends. And that human connection is really important. And sometimes we underestimate the impact it has on our children. And so they enjoy being around each other. You know, part of being a student is the socialization aspects. And when you don't have that opportunity, then it begins to take a toll on you. And, you know, I had 2 students, young girls who were on Zoom, and they hadn't seen each other since school was out. And they just, you know, want a virtual hug, if you will. Oh, I miss you. And they need that. And I think parents need to be aware of the fact that your children's home, and they need the interaction. They need to be validated all the time, because they're humans, and they need that love. And so I think that's sometimes we underestimate the impact it has, and we need to really bring it to the forefront.
That's good. That helps me, seriously. I got 4, and it's like, 2 seem good and 2 don't seem good. So, no, that helps me. But not only are we entering a school year with COVID on the mind, we all know that, but also dealing with all the racial tension, the social unrest. John, let me start with you on this, especially dealing with Pattonville being voted one of the most diverse schools in the state. What have you seen? You've been there, 8 years, you said? What have you seen just within the school district that's working? You're like, yes, this is why we're so diverse and we're hitting on this.
Well, I think the first important piece is to embrace the diversity and just try to understand that it's a strength and that it's an excellent thing to have in a school district. I think we do an excellent job in Pattonville of individualizing with the students and seeing them as individuals, making sure we're making connections on a personal level. Having outlets for the students and giving them student voice is another big one, whether that be just making sure that they have a counselor that they can talk to, teachers that care about them. Yeah. We've set up a number of really excellent mentoring programs. We have a group called BSAC, which is a group of students that meets directly with school administrators and the school board to, just whenever they have a change they want to enact, they can bring it directly to us so we can hear it. I think that's really at the end one of the key strengths that we have with diversity in Pattonville is that we really try to individualize and personalize education. We try to see the student as an individual, and we try to make sure that they have student voice.
Nice. What about you two? With the districts that you guys represent, what's working? What's something that you may even want to see being implemented this year or the next couple of years?
At Rittner, we have a wonderful radio station, and when this started, they took videos from students who are expressing their, views and their thoughts and their stories, and they posted it on our social media page. Wow. So giving a student the voice in that respect that's been a really positive thing, I believe.
Nice.
Because we need to be informed.
Yeah.
We don't know everybody's story. There's also a movement at Rittner called You Don't Know My Story.
Wow.
So that's helped to foster more conversations and
nice.
Inclusion and all that. So
okay.
I think those are 2 really great things.
Nice. Doc, what about you?
This issue of race, I think, is one that has, pained our country, our world, for that matter, for centuries. And we have a hard time in America talking about race, especially when it comes to black people and white people. And we don't know how to have that conversation in a safe way, and I think it's important that we do. I think it also has to start with knowing who the Lord Jesus is, because I think that's the most important part of it all.
Yeah.
But I think the other part is that we have to have these conversations, and I think that there's an African word, Ubuntu, and it means I see you.
Yep. And
everybody wants to be validated. I mean, we're humans, and we're obviously more alike than we're different, but we divide each other out because of race. And it divides us so much so that it causes just so much tension in our world. And, I think having the conversation is the first piece of it. You have to, look in the mirror and then the microscope.
Yeah.
Who am I? And what do I think about people who don't look like me? And the way we were socialized has a lot to do with how we handle other people, especially people who don't look like us.
Yeah.
And I think when we can see beyond the color of someone's skin, and as King said, look at the content of their character, that's the difference maker. And, I want my son to live in a world where that he is judged not by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. So my wife and I are raising a young man who can love and be loved. And every child wants that, whatever color they are. And I think that we have to, as Christians, more than anything else, be the leaders when it comes to putting this issue on the floor. Because I believe Satan does all he can to divide us, and we listen to it and we allow it to happen. Yeah. There's more than Chimamanda Adichie has a TED Talk. And she said the title of it is The Danger of a Single Story. Mm. And in essence, what she's saying is that not all black folks are alike, not all white folks are alike. Right. People are different, and we have to look at people as individuals. And so I think the first step is to have the conversation in a safe way and really dig down deep with what are my assumptions about people who don't look like me, and get to that place. I'll just quickly say, Mr. Seifert, Dr. Seifert and I were talking, and his son is a buddy of mine. I didn't know it. Jason,
small
superintendent,
world, man.
And it's so amazing because when he said it, I love Jason to death. And so when he said it, I just smiled because of the relationship that we have.
Yeah. We were trying to
and we've
get
known each
Jason
other
here,
long.
seriously.
Yeah, so it's just great. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So
Dr. Seifert, let me ask you this: when we talk about equity in education, because I mean, for you to be there at the start of the DSEG program that hit Parkway during the 80s, I mean, I'm sure we've had conversation about it and what that looked like. But when you hear that, I mean, what comes to mind? Equity in education.
Well, the word equity to me, being an old accounting teacher, business teacher, has to do with ownership.
Yeah.
But it also, in a different way, means that there is a fairness, if you will. And I think of it in maybe a sports term. When you go out to play a baseball game, one of the first things that happens is that the manager or coach will meet with the umpires at home plate, and what do? They exchange lineup cards, but they go over the ground rules. So they say, if this happens, this is what we'll call. If this happens, so everybody starts with the same set of rules, the same expectations,
Gotcha.
the same understandings. And so equity to me in education always meant a sort of leveling of the opportunity, if you will.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the outcome, because I don't control that outcome for you.
You're right.
I can help control the opportunity for you. So when we think about that, what does that look like in reality? Well, back 30 years ago or so, Public Law 91-142 came in.
Yeah.
The whole special education program. We came along with now our granddaughter is an ESL instructor.
Okay.
We've got all kinds of people coming from other countries to give them an opportunity, a fair opportunity to say, and ours, as educators, what I found about people, teachers, you can say what you want about them. We went into this because we care about people.
Right.
So if we really care about people, it's not up to us to decide necessarily, other than our vote, why those kids are in our classroom or how they got there. What are we going to do with them now? And so we're going to have special reading programs if they're behind.
Yeah.
If I ask, I've got 3 little darlings in first grade who can't read at grade level. Well, am I going to leave them behind? No, I'm going to find a way to help bring them up to grade level and beyond.
Gotcha.
So it's a matter of fairness, of opportunity. Title I program, socioeconomic levels, all the different aspects, whether that's gender or race or nationality, a fairness of opportunity to take advantage of everything that's offered within that school, and setting high standards for every student and helping every student reach those standards. Now, I know that sounds Pollyannish to some people, but I've lived it, and I know it can happen.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work, but
Yep.
that's what we're there to do. So that's what equity in education means to me.
Okay.
It's a fairness of opportunity.
Yeah. Anybody else? You want to chime in on
I just
that?
want to ask a question.
Yeah.
Is this on?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. So I hear everything you're saying, and I'm right there with you. I think about the inequity. The kids come to school.
Mhm.
They're not all coming from the same type of home situation.
Right. Yeah.
So as equitable as a teacher can try to make the curriculum or just whatever goes on in the classroom, it's very challenging.
No question.
And that was always like a concern of mine. What do I do with this kid who tells me, this exceptionally bright young man that comes to my mind that would tell me he never did his homework because if he brought his books home on the bus, he'd get the crap kicked out of him for bringing his books home.
Wow.
So what I did, and I had several kids tell me that, I found out that was a real issue. So what I started doing, much to the chagrin of some of the people in my building, was I stopped assigning homework. And because we had 90-minute blocks, so because I taught English, I could do this more easily, I would have the first half hour be dedicated to everybody reading whatever chapters they were going to read and whatever novel we were reading. Everybody had the opportunity to read to read the assignment.
Wow.
And then the next 60 minutes were spent having the discussion that I would have had with kids that, maybe 7 or 8 of them wouldn't have even read the book or taken the book home.
Wow.
And that really, for me, really resonated throughout my teaching career, because I didn't really care whether there was like you have to give certain number of hours of homework a night. I wouldn't do it, because I realized that there were some kids who were doing the homework with the help of their parents.
Right.
Parents were writing the paper or the homework. I made sure everything was done in class where I could be there and where I could give them the help and the time and the space that they needed.
I think
So-
that's excellent. There, obviously, more recently, the flipped classroom is another opportunity to help with that. We had, unfortunately, throughout my career, I saw a fair number of young ladies who ended up with child. Well, what are you going to do with help the equity there?
Yeah.
Well, we saw a need. We talked. Those of us who were inclined prayed about it and set up a program to help address some of those needs and issues that those girls had. So again, and Kathy, you're exactly right. Good teachers do that.
Yeah.
Good teachers, good administrators find a way. Now, it may not be successful, but we do everything we can.
Right.
We're limited. We're human beings. But it's recognizing the need,
Okay.
figuring out in collaboration what the next best step is, and then if that doesn't work, what's the next best step? Let's just not say, well, we can't do it. Let's just not give up. So you mentioned about the voluntary transfer program.
Yeah.
You're in White West County for the most part. You all of a sudden, because of all that happened, one day there are, 20, 25 yellow school buses pull up out in front.
Yep.
And a group of African-American kids get off and come into school. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to welcome them. They're
Right.
our kids.
Right.
I'm not there for the politics of it. Don't know if it'll work, but it's my job to help make it work.
Wow.
So I think with that and those conversations, as we were talking about, it's ultimately relationships. It's what we have in common. It's about being intentional, and it's about pursuing that piece. It's about pursuing those kids, not just those kids, all kids.
Right.
And so and I will say this, from the beginning of that school, Parkway North, we spent a lot of time talking about relationships between faculty and students.
Yeah.
This is back in 1971. And all the way to the end, at least the time I was there, that was a paramount aspect of that school.
Wow.
And when you have relationships, so many of the other problems are taken care of because you can have those honest conversations.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. You and I were talking the other day, sitting at the bread company, and I put my arm up against yours. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out there's a difference.
Right.
But where are we the same?
Wow.
Why do I love you? Why do you love me?
Yeah.
So,
No, man, it's good stuff. And I let's just stay with the conversation piece, because Miss Rubin, see, there I go again, Miss Rubin. I can remember, like, seriously, being one of your students, and the very first time of even talking racial differe's and all this other stuff with a teacher was with you. You called them courageous conversations. What stirred you to even do it?
What stirred me to even do it? You mean to have the
Yeah,
courageous
to
conversations?
just do it.
Because that's how I roll in life. I mean, that is.
I love it.
I don't sidestep things, and if I have something to say, I say it. And I'll be real. I'm going to say something real honestly here. I had there were a number of times that a black student would tell me I was a racist.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And why would they tell me that? Because they'd come into my classroom and I'd say, please pull your pants up, take the hood off your head, sit up in your desk, and
Sounds
look at me
all
when
too
I'm
familiar,
talking.
man.
And don't take out that bag of chips.
Yeah,
It's not happening here. Well, Miss So-and-so, let's just do it. Mr. So-and-so, you're just saying that. That's part of our culture. You're a racist. And I go, look, you don't know, this would be like at the beginning of every school year. You don't know if I'm a racist or I'm not yet, because you don't really know me. But if I were a racist, I think I probably wouldn't really care less whether you slept through my class,
Yeah.
came in with your pants down,
Yeah.
acted like,
Yeah.
you didn't even want to be here. If that, I would let you slide. I'd let you sleep. I wouldn't go by when you put your head down on your desk and tap you on your head and say,
Yep.
if you think that that makes me a racist because I care whether or not you succeed,
Yeah.
then you're going to have to think that
Yeah.
until you know me better. And then you're going to know that I'm not.
Yeah.
Because if I were, there'd be a whole different thing going on here. And we would get in these conversations, like serious conversations
Yeah,
about
me
it.
and you got into it.
Yes,
so.
we did. Yes, we did. Because
Same
I'm
thing.
not, you know
First
what I
couple
think?
of days, I'm like, I can't stand this woman.
No,
I do
nobody
not want to be in
usually
her
can.
classroom. I'm like, why do you have a couch in your classroom if you ain't gonna let me sit on it? What are we doing? Oh, it was until we sat down and talked though after school one day,
Yeah,
and we just had it out. And I'm like, okay, this woman does care.
I remember it like
much
it was
to
yesterday.
I didn't like the ways in which you did care for me, but I mean, it was
Well,
for my own good.
And that's so it was always kind of an important thing to me. And I know that later on at Parkway, I developed and facilitated a program that was for year one teachers called Honoring All Voices. I don't know if you remember that. And they were required to attend
Wow.
this workshop during
Okay.
the summer.
Yeah,
And it was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, we addressed all the isms: racism, ageism, ableism,
gotcha.
sexual orientation, whatever it was.
Yeah.
We addressed, and it was all great, except, and the teachers all got it, except I never could see any evidence that it was being implemented
Yeah,
in the classroom.
gotcha.
We understood where everybody was coming from and that everybody has a story, but I think it's hard for people to have those
Yeah,
one-on-one.
totally. I think it's what Dr. Davis was saying
Yeah.
earlier, providing that safe space. I think you guys,
Mm-hmm.
I can only speak for me in my years at North, but you guys did provide those safe spaces, if you will, to have these conversations. But let me ask all of you, especially the three that are current teaching now in these schools, how can teachers encourage students to embrace diversity? Because I know how these two did it. We were talking earlier this morning of being in the lunchroom, and it's like, here comes a teacher taking our plate and putting it at a table with white students and like, nope, you sit there today, eat, have conversation. We're like, what? But today, I don't know if that'll fly, but
Did it fly then?
yeah,
Well, it only flew because we had a relationship.
right, totally.
You know?
Totally. But what are ways that you guys are encouraging students? What's some things that you can do to just embrace this thing of diversity? No particular order, just go for it.
Well, I'd say one thing, first of all, from the staff perspective, I think
Yeah.
we've done a good job over the past few years of really having some really effective professional development and really making teachers think about the way that they build those relationships and talk with their students. In particular, one thing I think we've addressed really well is unconscious bias.
Wow. Yep.
And kind of speaking back to that last point, the nice thing about when you talk to teachers about unconscious bias, as opposed to a lot of other professional development programs that we've done, is you're working with the teacher from the perspective of, we're all in this for the kids, and we know you're here to have a good faith effort to improve students' lives.
Yeah.
And to that degree, how do we improve? So that I think has been really important in staff trying to better understand their students and where they're coming from, put themselves in their student shoes. Other than that, I think the biggest thing that we can do as schools, and I'm speaking of Pattonville, but I think in general, is make sure that we're both offering students opportunities, academic and in general, and encouraging them to take those opportunities, but also really making sure that those students are involved and not letting students not be involved.
Got you.
I think the more you have students doing high rigor, high quality instruction, involved in activities and sports, clubs, whatever,
Yeah.
just interacting more. I think that's one of the most important things we can do, is just having great programs and encouraging students to interact, and not letting students not interact, not letting students fall behind, and not turning a blind eye to the kid that just comes and leaves and isn't involved.
Yeah. Tracy, what about you? What's some stuff you're seeing, ways to encourage?
I think our program at Rittner, the You Don't Know Your Story initiative, has really helped a lot, initiating those conversations and addressing division as we see it, and trying to get people to come together and talk more and get to know each other, whereas separately they probably would never have done that before.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the best things that's happened in recent history for Rittner. But addressing it as we see it right off the bat, and having discussions with students is one of the main things, I believe.
Nice. Dr. Davis, what
Yeah,
about you?
I think you start with to get more students to really embrace each other, especially if they are different in terms of race or gender. You have to do that engineering and think about who am I and what was my experience, because students will open up and have a conversation. I mean, it's easier, I think, as a teacher to get students to embrace that, but you have to have adults who can facilitate that at times, I think. And I think that's really important, to have those conversations, because we all have notions about people in our own culture or not. And I think sometimes we have to have those conversations publicly in a classroom or wherever, so that we can begin to sort of tease apart, what is and was your experience, and what makes you who you are. Because often you will find it's getting to know me. It's getting to know who I am. And I think that when we provide those kinds of opportunities, that's when we begin to challenge the assumptions that we have about other people.
Yeah.
We divide because we don't know each other. But once we get to know each other, then, it's easier to come together. I mean, just like you and your teacher, one of my favorite teachers was my trig teacher in high school, which is why I love math, and she was a white woman who didn't care about my poverty and what I came from, that I was this young black man who didn't have, and what she saw was my potential.
Right.
And she taught that.
Yep.
And I think that it's those kinds of opportunities that create greatness.
The student has to be open to that too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, they have to, and that's always the challenge, is how do you create that trust? And that's not always easy to achieve.
Right.
No, I think relationships is it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what me and Doc were talking a couple of days ago of, like, man, it got easier for him, got easier for you to correct me because of the relationship that we had. Any Joe Blow off the street, you're telling them I think that's the challenge for you. That first couple of days of school, you're trying to correct and, like you said, pull your pants up and all of that. They don't want to hear that, because it's like, you don't know me and all of that. But I appreciate the push, even when I didn't want it. Saying I wanted to quit your class like so many times. She wouldn't let me quit. So I think it's what you just said of teaching and speaking to the potential. I think that's huge. Doc, you going to say something?
Well, Dr. Davis said earlier, we all want to be valued.
Yeah.
He mentioned the word caring. You mentioned the word caring. We've all mentioned that in some way.
Yep.
When we're authentic, when we do care about another person, it begins to come through. Now, I agree with Kathy. There are students who I've had that just didn't seem to accept it, didn't seem to care, but that didn't cause me to not be the same person I am. And what I have to hope and pray is that as you and I perhaps had a relationship, maybe that was seen by somebody else that began a change in them.
Yep.
We don't always know that, but again, I went back to, I can't be responsible for the results.
Yep.
And you, I think you understand what I mean there.
Yeah.
But I only can be responsible for what God's put in my heart, to care about another individual, to show that, and to be as the best ambassador I can in that way, so that when that happens, that sort of, I would call it, I don't know, that sinking of relationship,
Right.
people understand, maybe I'd like to talk to those two. Maybe I'd like to find out what they've got.
I got you. Well, last question from me, and then if there's anything that you guys want to hit on that we haven't, we'll definitely take the time for that. But once again, as a parent, what can I be doing? What can other parents around, leaders, youth leaders like myself and things like that, what can we be doing to help you all as educators? What can we do?
I think the main thing is pray for us.
Okay.
We're going to need lots of prayer. Students are going to need lots of prayer. It's a bad situation all the way around,
Yeah.
but we're going to make the best of it. So prayer is key, but also give us some grace as well as we learn
Yeah.
how to teach in these new ways. And as your student learns how to learn virtually, where it might not be a strength of theirs. So just give some grace.
It's good. Dr. Davis, anything?
I think God is returning us to our first love, and He's caused us to be home, and it has been awesome for me and my family, my wife and my son. We have a small family, but it's the three of us, and we just have had the best time. We spend time together like we haven't had before because of going to work, and my wife going to work, and she's here, and I'm there, and my son going to school. But it's just returning us to that relationship, and so I think that for us as educators, it's really important, as Tracy said, is to pray and to put God first in everything. And I think that's the missing piece, not only in schools but this world.
Yeah.
And I think we have to return to Him and that, because it has caused me to, really think about my walk with Christ more than ever before, because I get so busy with the work itself, I forget about not just who am I, but whose am I. Yeah, and as I think about who I belong to, then that just gives me a new way of looking at life. And I'm just so grateful that in all this stuff that we go through, that God gives me a peace that surpasses all understanding. And so I know it's hard. All this stuff is hard, but I can get in my little corner at home and just have my time with the Lord. Yeah. And it just gives me the joy I need to go back out there and do it again, because I know He's bigger than any problem.
That's awesome. I mean, I can donate 2 more kids to you at any time. You want a little brother or sister, man? You let me know. I'll get
BJ.
I actually became, when this whole COVID business started looking at it very spiritually, and I kept thinking, there's a reason why this is happening now. Yeah. Everything got so out of whack in the world. Too much materialism, too much anger, too much of everything. Yeah. And I thought, when we were confined all of a sudden to home and to family, I mean, my husband and I are empty nesters, obviously, but we were, at home and cooking and taking walks and doing things. And same thing with my kids, with their families. They were doing things together as families, and it's really sort of made you realize what was really, truly important. Gotcha. All the stuff that everybody was doing before this seems so frivolous and ridiculous to me now, almost. And what I think God gave us a way to refocus on what's important.
That's right.
That's how I looked at it. But.
That's awesome. John, anything?
All I'd say, those are some wonderful sentiments, especially I'd love to give us some grace.
Yeah.
We'll, we want to start August 24th, and we want to provide a high quality education, and we're giving it 100% every day.
That's awesome.
The only other thing I'd say is I would ask for prayers that we do get back to normal. Yeah. And what I would say is, just as an example, we have a wonderful counselor at PHS whose senior daughter is a senior at PHS, brilliant girl. And I saw her over the summer, and she was talking about her daughter and just was lamenting the potential loss of, prom and graduation.
Yeah.
Things our seniors this year already lost, but having to go into the year with the potential of having a senior year without those milestones, and just hoping that we're going to start getting on track here pretty soon. That's what I'd also ask for prayers for.
Nice. Dot?
Well, I think if we can imagine as parents and grandparents and citizens the enormity of running a school and a school district, and all that takes in, quote, normal, whatever that is, time, and then add this in, and if you think about where we've come in this COVID situation in the last 4 or 5 months, when we first realized, I'm speaking personally, that we were in.
Yeah.
We weren't going out much, if at all.
Yeah.
So what's that look like? My wife and I sat there and looked at each other, and we'd have our prayer time or whatever, or we'd watch a television show, or we'd have dinner. Well, son-in-law said to our daughter, why don't we FaceTime your folks and let's have dinner together? So we did that. Our son and daughter-in-law and their boys, we said, hey, let's FaceTime and play a little game over FaceTime.
Yeah.
We saw them probably as much that way as we did in the, quote, normal times.
Gotcha.
But the thing I'm trying to get at is that we still are all, we don't know what the future's holding. Yeah. And we're all to some degree fearful. Mm-hmm. And I know that these guys as superintendents, and I'm going to point to him because that really is on his shoulders. Yeah. It's on these men and women's shoulders to get things ready for the classroom teachers and for the administrators and for the parents and for the students, and it's an enormous task. Most of us went into this because we love people, we love kids, we have a purpose in life. God has given us a purpose, whether we realize it or not, that we're here on this earth to build relationships and help kids.
Yeah.
So I would encourage parents to keep that in mind and not to let fear get a dividing factor in there that all of a sudden one side becomes the enemy. Because we're all after the same thing. Right. And when we've asked and asked and asked and asked for what's the plan, what's the plan? I heard a lady on television the other night and she was as absolutely beautiful as she could be. I think had 3 kids. Her husband is going to change his work situation, so he's there sometimes, they're there sometimes, they're going to keep their kids home. That's great. They're planning, this, that, and the other. But you know what? These people have been planning and planning and planning, and we don't know if that's going to work. Right. What's happened to the Missouri COVID spike? Right. Where a month ago we thought, hey, this could work here. Now we don't know.
Right.
So let's all keep in mind, let's all have grace. Right. Let's not practice the cancel culture. Yeah. Let's not let the dividers come. Let's find out where we have similarities, sameness, and that's in purpose for your kids. Yep. And so ideas are like noses. Everybody has one. But we don't know what we don't know. Yeah, exactly. So they're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. I think we can end on that. Seriously. Well, speaking of prayer, let me pray for all of you guys, if you will. Father, I just thank you for every single individual that's here with me tonight, in education, retired education. Father, first of all, I just thank you for their dedication, their heart, their passion into what they're putting into these schools that are represented, as well as other districts and other schools of individuals that may be watching this now, all of our teachers, all of our administration. We just lift them up right now, strengthen them, encourage them, help them in this time of confusion, this fight that they're in. Thank you that you're with them in all of the decision making. Pray that as parents, we give them the grace. We come to a place of understanding that we're on the same page and we all want what's best for our kids. But God, I thank you that they are able to do their jobs effectively without fear, like Doc said, that they know that you are in control of all of this. This hasn't caught you off guard. But Father, calm us down. Calm our hearts, our minds, our spirits, and help us to just go into this new school year with good mindsets, with healthy mindsets. Be with our students. Father, help them in this time of being isolated, being separated from their friends, not being able to do sports, cheerleading, clubs, whatever the case. God, just be with them. help them in this. I thank you that relationships are strengthened somehow, some way in the midst of this. We give you the glory and the honor in this in Jesus' name. Amen. And once again, I cannot thank you guys enough for being here for this. I thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for watching, tuning in. Hope you got something from it. I love the fact that we can just sit in here and have conversation about concerns and things that we have on the brain. So I can't say thank you enough. Thank you for watching. Gentle, quick reminder for next week, the 29th, next Wednesday. All freshmen, you are welcomed. You are allowed in the building, freshmen only. Want to celebrate you guys. You didn't get your little 8th grade celebration, so we want to do that with you next week. We'll have another church here with us. Fresh Youth Ministries, they're going to be intermingling with the band, with the worship team, and all of that. So make sure you're here for that. We will see you guys soon. Tune in to all of our social media and all the stuff that we got going on. We'll see you. Thanks.